Hi guys, this is Heather with Creativity by Heather BE. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am showing you 5 cards, 1 kit with the Brutus Monroe July Inspiration Box. This box is all about space. It's actually called Out of This World. Fabulous box. I did 5 cards. There were so many more I could have done. I just didn't want this video to go on and on. So much inspiration from this one box. I did do a haul unboxing of this that I'll link above. So for card number 1, I am going to use some deco foil, and I've used deco foil transfer gel in several videos, and I'll also link those up here. So on a live video, Christopher Allen, who owns Brutus Monroe, showed how you could use the deco foil with a stencil on the Brutus Monroe glitter paper. So this is the sterling glitter paper. And so what I did is off camera, I used the gel through the stencil, let it dry, and now I'm using a piece of foil and deco foil. This is not a Brutus Monroe foil. This is just one I had in my stash. I wanted a brighter blue for this background, so I just used one I had in my stash. And as always, the reveal on these foils just amazed me. I used to think it was so cool when heat embossing would melt, and it's nothing compared to seeing the foils. So you can see how beautiful that is. This is a fabulous stencil. This was actually an add-on, the space stencil. And I will link all the products down below. One of the nice things about the Brutus Monroe kit is you can get the products separately as well. So they always include a bunch of paper, and this one included several sheets of Brutus Monroe vellum. And so what I decided to do, because the background was so busy and vivid, I didn't want to take away from that with the sentiment, but I needed to tone it down a little bit so you could see the sentiment. So I am stamping that out with the Brutus Monroe embossing ink and then adding the Brutus Monroe Raven embossing powder. This is a great black embossing powder. It stays where you put it. A lot of black embossing powders are very dusty, and this one is not. So as long as you use your anti-static tool, this goes exactly where you want it to, just like any other embossing powder. So I'm going to adhere my card base to my panel. And I'm just going to use some liquid adhesive right on the back of where I heat embossed to hide some of that adhesive. And then I also put some dots around the edges. And once it dries, you really can't see them. The inspiration box this month also came with some little jewels, adhesive jewels. So I am going to stick 3 or 4 of those around, some of them to hide a little bit of the adhesive on the vellum. When you're working with vellum, sometimes you have to be kind of strategic on placement of embellishments and adhesive and things like that. So this was a perfect way to use up some of those jewels. So there you can see, very simple, gorgeous. The foiling, I cannot say it enough, just makes your cards look amazing. So for card number 2, I am also going to foil this card as well. But for this one, I'm actually going to be using the designer toner sheet. So this is something a little different. And I am using the brushstroke transfer sheets, and they are just gorgeous. They're golds and blacks and got a little bit of silver. So for these sheets, the toner sheets, the toner is already on it. So all you have to do is cut it down. And this is a transparent one. There are some that are not transparent like this. And if you look, I'm showing you the way you know where to put your foiling sheet is the side that's matte. So the side that's shiny is the side that you're going to put facing down. You're going to put your foil transfer sheet over top of where the matte is. So while that's running through my laminator, I'm going to go ahead and set up and get ready for my stamp. So this kit had a fabulous stamp. It was actually the artwork on the front of the box. And it's just kind of a conglomeration of a bunch of different space things. And so I decided I wanted to stamp that on the front, and I wanted to heat emboss it. So this is the reveal of that marble toner sheet. And you can see how gorgeous that is. So simple. The toner, that Brutus Monroe takes the work out of it for you. It's already there. All you have to do is add your favorite foil. And there are several different varieties of the toner sheets, and I'll link to those down below for you. So I'm just making sure I'm lining up where I want my stamp to be. And I decided I wanted to do this card as a landscape card. So I'm going to use my Brutus Monroe embossing ink, and you can heat emboss on these toner sheets. However, you need to be very careful. It's kind of like with vellum. I'm going to use alabaster embossing powder here. But with vellum, you need to make sure your heat gun is very hot, and you're also bringing it to your vellum or your acetate in this instance and pulling it away. You see how I'm kind of going in and I'm pulling it away? It will melt. And once it melts, you're done. So I did have one that melted on me. So for my background, I decided I wanted to use some of the gorgeous glitter stock from Brutus Monroe, and I will have all the gorgeous colors linked below. This one is French Rose. I went back and forth. You could see over there on the edge, I did have some of the gilded, and I'll use that later on in a card. But I decided I wanted to use a deep dark color that would pop out my panel. So I decided on this one, I was also just going to place a sentiment on the inside, so there is no sentiment on the front of this card. And another fabulous thing about these clear toner sheets is you can put your adhesive everywhere that toner was. So that way you have a lot of room to add your adhesive. Because along with vellum, you know, with these clear adhesives, or excuse me, these clear sheets, it's kind of hard to hide your adhesive, and this makes it so easy. So I'm just going to put that down on my panel, and you can see how that pops, and you'll be able to see that stamp. I should have zoomed in for you a little closer. I did set a heavy acrylic block on top of it, excuse me, just to make sure it dried and stayed down. I'm going to use my Teflon bone folder just to get that crease really well and make sure everything's down where it's supposed to be. And there's the finished card. You can see how gorgeous that is. This glitter stock is fabulous. Definitely check it out. So for card number 3, I am using the new Brutus Monroe glitter glazes. So I am going to use scarlet, gold, and then glow in the dark. So this is kind of like a glitter paste, but not really. It's not quite as thick and glittery, if that makes sense. You still get the glitter look, but like the other companies, it's a little thicker, I guess. This is more the consistency of like a thicker mayonnaise. It's hard to describe, but I wanted to create a combination of the two colors. I didn't necessarily want the scarlet and gold, so what I decided to do was just mix them up. And then I thought, well, you know what? We're going to do a space theme. Let's try to put some of the glow in the dark in there. So I added the glow in the dark. Now, one thing you'll see me that I did is I kept a baby wipe near me, and I wiped that palette knife off every time before I put it in the different color because I didn't want to mix them in my jars. So I just have a sheet. I believe this is Bristol Smooth cardstock. You can use any paper really here, and I am just smoothing it out all over my card, and I'm going to set that aside and let it dry. We'll come back to that in a moment. So for this card, I decided to do a scene. So there's a lot of little spaceships and Martians and aliens and things like that, and I wanted to do a scene. So I am using the Brutus Monroe Surface ink. This is the cornflower, and I am just putting it on my card, and you can see how beautiful this blends. It goes on smooth, and I didn't care that I had some of those heavier spots because it's outer space, so it's not going to be completely even. I am going in with a little bit of black soot, Distress Oxide ink, and just kind of darkening it up a little bit, and then going right back in with the cornflower surface ink. So now that my glitter paste is dry, I'm going to take a stitch circle, and I'm going to die cut that out. So once it's cut out, what I'm going to do, so in my mind, this is kind of like a little planet that my little Martians are standing on. So you can see there, I stamped with the Brutus Monroe Raven ink, which is a great detailed ink for Copic marker coloring, watercoloring, and I colored all those and fussy cut them. And I also used some of the glow in the dark glitter glaze and did a couple stars for that were cut out from a card I'm going to show you here in a moment. So I'm just going through and placing down all my characters how I want to create my scene. And once I get everything placed where I want, I am going to use a piece of fun foam and lift up my planet. That's also where I'm going to put my sentiment. And I decided there was one little kind of like space guy that didn't look so Martian-y, so I decided he was going to be the one that's getting kind of pulled up from the little spaceship there. There's a couple rockets. I did use some of the tonic glitter glaze on these as well after I cut them out, just to give them a little bit of shine. So there I'm using some fun foam just to give my planet a little bit of dimension. You can see how gorgeous that glitter glaze is. So I'm just trying to get everything figure out, do I want this little guy on top of my planet? Do I want him kind of under it? And I do end up putting him under it. Now those two I am going to put some foam dots under just to give them a little bit of dimension. So still just rearranging. As you know, with scene cards, if you created scene cards, it's so much better to kind of get it laid out exactly how you want it, because you can always move it around. So there was a adorable little stamp. It's a barcode and it says "Have a blast," and that's the sentiment that I decided to use. So there you can see the finished card. Very simple, fun. This would be great for a little guy's birthday, first day of school. So really fun card to make. Okay, card number 4. So for card number 4, I lost the film footage of this, so I'm going to recreate some of it just because I am using a new product that I haven't used in a video before. So I am using the stencil here, and what I have is the Deco Foil adhesive pen. And this is awesome. You can run it through a laminator, but you don't have to if you have this pen either. You get better results with the laminator, but you can just work this on like a pen, put your foil on it. I usually kind of push it down, burnish it, and then pull it off, and you will get the results of the foiling. This is great too, because if you want to do your own handwriting and foil, you can use this pen. So this pen makes foiling a lot more versatile. So what I did on the panel there to the left, where I lost my footage, is I just went through and added a bunch of the little planets and then some of the stars. And then I used the Brutus Monroe Sunrise Deco Foil sheets and placed those on top. Now what I wanted to do with this particular card is I wanted to see if you could ink blend over top of foiling, and you can, which was fabulous. So I used Distress Oxide Soot and Distress Oxide Blueprint Sketch. All you have to do is just make sure that you buff it off like you do if you're doing like an emboss resist. So I wanted to add some kind of space, more space looking to this. So what I did is I took some Perfect Pearls, and this is a powder. So I just sprayed some water out onto my glass mat and then used it into my paintbrush to put some of the Perfect Pearls powder in. And if you need, you can make it whatever consistency you want. So it's a little thicker there, so I'm going to add some more water to it. And then all you do is just flick your brush. And on the card, I actually used the footage that got cut off. I actually used the gold and the Perfect Pearls, which is like just a shimmer color. So for my panel, I did cut it down, and I decided that I wanted to give it some edging. So I am using the Sterling glitter stock from Brutus Monroe on the right side, and then I'm using the gilded glitter stock on the left side. And I'm going to place that entire panel down on the blue sheet up there, and I believe that's cornflower cardstock. It came in the kit. So it kind of gives it a little more edging, and it pops. So I went through and I did some ink blending over the foil, and I wanted to go ahead and heat emboss on top of it as well. So I am pulling out the sentiment. It says, "I love you to the moon and back," and I love the way the sentiment is situated, kind of in a long block. And I'm going to heat emboss this with the Alabaster White, which, as I've said in other videos, has now become my favorite white. I searched and went through a lot of different white embossing powders, and I kind of settled on the Nouveau, which I really do like, but this Alabaster is just so bright white, and that's what I love about it. So I'm going to heat set that, and then just take my entire panel and put it on my card base, and my card is done. So a lot of fun techniques, but a very simple, quick, really easy card to do. So I love you to the moon and back, and there is our card. Okay, so for our last card, card number 5, this is where I got the stars from. So this kit came with 5, I believe, die cuts, and I actually used 4 of them. And it came with this awesome Milky Way embossing powder. So I had picked up some of the glow-in-the-dark embossing powder when I was at the Brutus Monroe Studio store in June. And I decided I took an empty container because I dumped all of my alabaster into the larger container. So I kept those smaller ones. And I'm going to mix the Milky Way with some of the glow-in-the-dark. I just, one of the things I love to do when I'm crafting is just play around and see, will it work? And so I decided, you want to have both of them. It's this space, let's try it. So I'm using my embossing ink, and I did need to use a powder tool here because I'm going to ink up my entire panel. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to heat emboss this with the Milky Way and the glow-in-the-dark mixture. So once I got this on, and you'll see as it's going on, it doesn't look like anything. You're kind of like, wait a minute, this isn't even covering it up. But when it melts, oh my goodness, it is gorgeous. And you'll see once I start to add heat to it, it is beautiful. And this you can get separately as well through Brutus Monroe. So you can see there it's already kind of got that grayish color. I will say I don't think I put enough of the glow-in-the-dark embossing powder in because when it glowed, but not as much of the effect as I wanted, but I didn't care because the card still looks gorgeous with that Milky Way. So to kind of cover up some of the white areas, because we are in space, I went back to my cornflower again and went right over top the heat embossing. And then what I'm going to do is just take a cloth when I'm done, just like any type of emboss resist, and buff off all of the ink off of my embossing powder. And I'm going to get this gorgeous blue background with that Milky Way embossing powder popping out. And this is going to be a shaker card. This card kit came with some awesome, it almost looked like little moon rocks or stones. And so I mixed those with some silver stars that I had in my stash. And I'm going to create a shaker card. So for my sentiment, there's a sentiment that says shoot for the moon. And so I decided to stamp that out just in detailed ink. I didn't heat emboss or anything. I wanted it to be simple. Onto some gray cardstock that came in the kit. And I'm just going to cut that down so that way it fits at the bottom of my card. Because I wanted that background, that Milky Way embossing powder and the shaker bits to be the star of the show, but I wanted a sentiment on it. So I am going to use double-sided foam tape here. And I forgot to double it up. As I have showed you in another video, I usually double it up to give it more height. And especially with these little stones, I wanted it higher. So what I did is I just went back and just added another layer right on top of those. I also forgot to add my acetate in. So I started putting the stones in and they started falling through the card and realized, oh, I forgot my acetate. So I just cut little squares of acetate and fit them down, glued them down into each one. It made more work, but it worked. So, don't get frustrated and feel like if you forgot a step, especially something like this, that you have to start over, because you don't. You can always figure out a fix. So I'm using my Nuvo spoon. I'm sure there's a more technical name for that thing. But I said in another video, I really do like this. I didn't think I would, but I love this thing. So I'm just adding my mix, and I used another one of my empty containers to mix up my sequins as well. So I encourage you to hang on to those containers. And I just added a piece of white backing because there were so many shaker bits in there. I knew you wouldn't really be able to see through it anyway, so I just used a white backing panel. And I'm going to put that onto my panel. And I did use some strong adhesive for this just because it does have some weight to it. Isn't that Milky Way embossing powder just gorgeous? So now I'm adding my sentiment, the shoot for the moon, on the bottom, and that will complete this card. I hope you enjoyed and got some inspiration from this awesome, amazing inspiration box from Brutus Monroe. This is a subscription box, but you can buy them monthly as long as the supplies are there. The advantage to getting the subscription box is that you also get 15% off other products every day, which is fabulous, and you're guaranteed to get it. So I highly encourage you to check out Brutus Monroe and all the awesome, amazing products they have. I will have everything linked below for you. I hope you enjoyed and have a great day.